Hey guys, welcome to question FM383 of the Further Maths Fortify study guide. This question reads, the shaded area in the graph below shows the feasible region for a linear programming problem. And we're given a graph now. I haven't actually drawn out the lines, but those are essentially the positions of each of the points we'll be looking at in this question. In your books, you're also given the exact coordinates of each of these points, which comes in handy a little bit later. The objective function is given by z equals px plus qy. Which one of the following statements is true? And then we're given 5 statements. So the first one, for example, A, says when p equals 2 and q equals 6, the maximum value of z is at point A. Now to sort of reduce that down a little bit, what I've written here is that option A is that when p equals 2, so that makes it 2x plus, and when q equals 6, 6y, the maximum value of z is at point A. So I've said here that 2x plus 6y equals z, and the statement that's being made is that the maximum value is going to be at A. What we're going to do in this question, just because it's a little more sophisticated, a little bit trickier, is we're going to try and eliminate options before we start going into sort of the nitty-gritty of figuring out whether a maximum or a minimum occurs at those exact points by trying to get rid of the more apparent ones. For example, when we're given 2x plus 6y, a maximum occurring at A is highly unlikely. The reason being, let's keep this in nice, we'll make up numbers for the sake of simplicity here. So let's say that the coordinates for A were 1, 1. Well, then that would mean that we have 2 times 1 plus 6 times 1, or 2 plus 6. And that would be our, I guess, score for that coordinate A. Now B has both a larger x value and a larger y value. So even if it was just by one unit in each direction, so if B's position was 2, 2, that would make this 2 times 2, which would be 4, plus 6 times 2, which would be 12, and if you add 4 and 6, that would give that value 16. Meaning that B is always going to have a larger maximum because it has both a larger x and a larger y, and there's no negatives involved in here, which means that that larger number doesn't reduce the overall value. So our chances of having a maximum occur at A, given this equation, is none, because B has a greater x and y, C has a greater x and y, E has a much greater x, not quite as high on the y, and D has a much greater x, once again below on the y, but it's highly likely that the maximum is either going to occur at B or C. Option B says that 5x plus 9y is going to be equal to Z, and the minimum is going to occur at B. So for the same reason that A wasn't going to be a maximum, B is also not going to be a minimum, because once again, B is up here, and compared to B, A has less of an x value and less of a y value, meaning that A is definitely going to be a minimum before B is going to be a minimum. So we can get rid of option B. Option C here says we're going to have the maximum occur at C according to 7x plus 7y. Now this is a fun one because, for example here, since we're looking for a maximum, now C could be a maximum, B could also be a maximum because it's got a, look, it has less of an x value, but it has a greater y value. And E has a lesser y value, but a greater x value. So it's highly likely that one of these three is going to be our maximum. Now the reason D isn't being included there is because E here has a greater x and y position than D, so it's definitely not going to be D, but we're going to come back to option C, I think, and check out B, C, and E to see which one of those is the maximum. Moving on to D, we've got 9x plus 4y equals z, and the maximum occurring at D. Once again, E would be a maximum before D is because it has a greater x and a greater y value, meaning that the maximum is definitely not going to be at D, given that neither the 9 or 4 is negative. Option E says 7x plus y is equal to z, and the minimum is going to occur at E. Once again, looking at this, we're looking for a minimum. Since D has a lesser x and a lesser y value, it's definitely going to be a minimum before E is, so E is off the table. At this stage, we should be fairly sure that C is going to be our true statement, but we do want to, if we have the time, we definitely want to double check just in case. So option B here, well, that would be 7 times 3.5 plus 7 times 21.2, which all up would equal 172.9. C would be 7 times 18 plus 7 times 14, which should be equal to 224. And E should be 7 times 18.9 plus 7 times 3.7, which will be equal to 158.2. So looking here, we can see that C is going to have our maximum value, which means that this statement is true, and C is your correct answer. If you guys have any questions about this, please drop them in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.